What's up, everyone? Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. Mike, I'm excited for tonight's show. We covered two different things, but coincidentally, they're called or explained as being the same type of entity, and that's a ghost.
Ooh.
And if that's what they're calling these things, tonight we're going to be talking about some of the weirdest fucking ghosts ever.
I can tell you right now, mine's not a ghost at all, so.
Ooh.
Yeah. And yours, I've got a feeling, is not going to be a ghost either.
I might have the same feelings as you on this case, because I don't know. It's very interesting. It takes a couple of turns on what it could be, I guess.
All right. Well, so the ghost, and you can't see me because this is a podcast, but I'm doing quotey fingers. The ghost is called the Hammersmith ghost. And this case, I think, is probably more well known because of what happened as, I guess, towards the end of the chain of events. But the Hammersmith ghost was basically Spring-Heeled Jack before Spring-Heeled Jack was named Spring-Heeled Jack. I mean, I can't say for certain that this is the same perpetrator, whether it be some sort of weird entity or some sort of technologically advanced prankster. I don't know, but it has a lot of similar traits. Basically, it was this figure who was dressed in all white, or was himself all white, who would grab people and scare them in the middle of the night. But it was, the local legend said that it was a ghost of a man who had committed suicide in 1802. And he was buried in the Hammersmith churchyard. And around this time, it was believed that suicide victims weren't able to be buried in consecrated ground. And if they were, then their souls wouldn't be able to lay to rest, and they would come back to haunt the living.
Can't have that. No,
you can't have that, because then you've got a ghost that's attacking people in the middle of the night and scaring the shit out of them. So this became more of a local legend in the Hammersmith area. And this is in the UK, by the way. And the stories that started to circulate, a lot of them, it really takes on the feeling of urban legend, because for the most part, witnesses aren't named, but there's stories like 2 women were walking home at night, and one of them was an old woman and the other was her daughter, who just happened to be pregnant. And as they were walking home, there was a ghost who ran up on them, and he grabbed them and he scared them so much. And apparently they were so frightened by this ghost who attacked them from out of nowhere that they both dropped dead a few days later, just because that's how scared they were. Those type of stories. But there were some people who were named, but again, this took place in 1803, so at this point, who knows? These could just be names that were thrown out there just to kind of give credence. But one story is a brewer's servant named Thomas Groom, who claimed to have been walking through the graveyard with one of his friends around 9 o'clock at night. And as they were walking through, he saw something rise from behind a tombstone, and it reached out and it grabbed him by the throat. And his friend was walking ahead of him at the time, and he started, making gagging sounds and kicking and trying to escape the grasp. And his friend turned around, hearing the noise, and the ghost, he said, twisted him around. And when he turned around, there was nothing there.
Damn, that's kind of scary.
Yeah. So it's more less jumping over walls and fire breathing, and more just jumping out at people and scaring them in the middle of the night. But this thing was described as being very tall, And as I said, it was all in white. But they also said that, well, I should say there were other reports that said that there were also this being either had large eyes or was wearing glasses, and it also, in some reports, had horns. But everybody described it as being tall and dressed in white. So these went on for a while, a little over a month, and at the end of December was one of the last sightings that was reported. You know, there may have been more sightings that just didn't make it through the years, but there was a night watchman by the name of William Girdler who claimed to have seen the ghost and chased after it. And he said as he was chasing it, the ghost threw off its white shroud and escaped. So that kind of makes it seem like it's more a person. They just threw off their costume and it's like, oh God, no longer am I chasing a white figure because he threw off his shroud and now it's just a regular person. But around this time, after this chase took place, people started to get really paranoid and they all got up in arms and were actively patrolling the streets in the Hammersmith area. Everyone in the area was afraid, so police along with private citizens came together and started patrolling the area. And this all culminated on the night of January 3rd in 1804. There was a man by the name of Francis Smith, who was 29 years old, and he went off looking for the ghost. He went out on patrol, and he basically made it known that he was going out and he was going to take down the ghost once and for all. He was going to fucking smoke that fool and end its reign of terror.
He went out whistling the Ghostbusters theme, swinging a club.
Yeah. No, he was swinging a shotgun.
Because that's what kills
Francis
ghosts.
Smith went out armed with a shotgun. Well, yeah. I mean, in Victorian England, if you're being haunted by a ghost, you just blast it with your shotgun. And that's how you do it. So just after 11 o'clock at night, a man by the name of Thomas Millwood, who was a bricklayer, he was getting ready to head home. He had visited his parents after work and he was still in his work clothes. And he was heading home, still dressed in his work clothes, which was the normal clothing or the normal uniform for bricklayers of that time, which was white pants, a white waistcoat, and a white apron. So he's wearing all white. And he's walking down the street, 11 o'clock at night, heading home. And Smith, being all, gung-ho, ready to take this ghost down, sees this white figure, calls out to it. And according to Smith, he yelled out to him, who are you and what are you? Damn you, I'll shoot you. And after that point, when he did not get a immediate response, Francis Smith shot him in the jaw and killed him.
Oh, what a dick.
So after he realized he killed him, he let the authorities know that he had killed a man. They came in, took over, started investigating, and they took Smith into custody. They carried the dead man to an inn where there was a surgeon, Dr. Flower, who examined the body and pronounced the death to be a result of a gunshot wound to the fucking face. But he said what actually killed him was that a fragment from the shotgun penetrated into one of the vertebrae in his neck, and it injured the spinal column, which resulted in him dying.
Jeez.
Yeah. So after this took place, there ended up being a trial, and everyone thought, well, this is going to be the end of it. Somebody actually died the pranks are going to stop. The pranks didn't stop. They continued on for a while. So it just wasn't as common anymore. And people now weren't so willing to hunt down and go patrol in armed groups anymore because an innocent person had died. But eventually the Hammersmith ghost became outclassed by the Spring-Heeled Jack and SPANKO and that whole other group of characters that we talked about in a previous episode. But apparently the Victorian era in England, or in London specifically, was not a place to fuck around. You had all sorts of things jumping out of the shadows at you. At best, you get your ass slapped. At worst, you get fucking eviscerated and have surgery performed on you in a back alley. So,
yeah,
I guess be careful if you go back in time. But this case specifically, I think, is more well known because of the actual trial of Francis Smith. He was actually tried for willful murder, and they did a full trial. One of the witnesses was the dead guy's wife, who stated that she told him to cover up when he was going out at night dressed in his bricklayer's uniform, that she had encouraged him to wear dark clothing so that he didn't stand out. But of course, like a typical willful male, he ignored his wife and went out into the night and got his face shot off.
Oh man. Damn the ghost.
He's like, fuck you, ghost. I will wear white anyway. Ha ha.
There's a couple things that are weird for me about this stuff. It's so similar to Spring-Heeled Jack, even down to little variances in his appearance. Like sometimes they said he had horns and stuff like that. And it's very interesting that the pranks continued even after somebody got their face shot off.
Yeah, that sucks. And I think that something similar to that could have happened with Spring-Heeled Jack. Because Spring-Heeled Jack was more, he was more violent. He was trying to rip ladies' tops off. He was breathing fire. He had claws on his hands. Like this was just some guy wearing white who was grabbing people passing the graveyard. I mean, who knows? It could have been two kids stacked on top of each other, wearing a sheet.
Well, I mean, why are they calling it a ghost though? Why aren't they calling it like a phantom or an attacker or a fiend or something like that?
Because they're calling it a ghost because it was all white and it came from the graveyard, and it had the backstory of being the guy who committed suicide and was buried in the churchyard.
So it didn't do any.
Now he comes back as a ghost.
So he didn't do any ghostly activities like disappear and reappear.
I think a lot of it is probably exaggerated. Like the dude who said he was choked and then he turned around and nothing was there. Like that dude was probably, something probably grabbed him, and then whoever it was like ducked behind a gravestone or something, and the guy's like, oh my God. And when you've got a story and fears being ramped up, like any little event can become like this major disaster.
Yeah. It was going on enough to where people were patrolling armed. I mean, that had to be pretty frequent and pretty bothersome for people to be doing that, taking those steps.
Yeah. Well, so in this case, and this case is pretty interesting, and I think kind of I think we could learn a lesson or two from this in the United States, with some of the wonky cases that we've seen with people shooting other people and getting off because of some weird technicality or some weird fucked up law or something. I don't know. But in this case, the judge had declared that Francis Smith had not acted in self-defense, and he did not shoot Millwood by accident. So this means that even that this was an intentional shooting, and he shot without having he was not in any danger, but he made a willful decision to point his weapon at this person and pull the trigger.
Right.
The judge ruled that he had not been provoked, and there was no attempt made to subdue or apprehend this ghost or person. Millwood himself had not committed any offense, and there was no justification in shooting him. And even if Millwood had been the perpetrator of these ghost attacks, that still would not have warranted him being shot. At that point, it was considered a misdemeanor, and there wouldn't have even been any jail time attached to it. It just would have ended up being a small fine for the perpetrator.
Gosh.
Like a childhood prank. So the judge closed his remarks to the jury by saying that the previous good character of the accused meant absolutely nothing as it pertains to this case. And he directed the jury, if they believed that the facts presented in the case were true, that they should find the accused guilty. So the jury deliberated, and after an hour, they returned with a verdict of manslaughter. But the judge was not having manslaughter, and he told the jury that the court refused to receive that verdict, and they must either find Smith guilty of murder or acquit him of all charges. And he said, again, the fact that Francis Smith believed that this was the ghost means nothing in this case. So again, the jury went back, deliberated, and they came back with a verdict of guilty. And the customary sentence for those found guilty of murder is a sentence of death, and then the body would be submitted to university for dissection. So the judge said that he intended to report this case to the king, who had the power to waive the sentence completely. So the initial sentencing was hanging, followed by dissection. It was later the king did end up commuting his sentence to 1 year hard labor in prison, and then he was released.
What? That's ridiculous. That guy was just walking home, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so with all the publicity that ended up going towards this case, someone actually came forward and said that he was pretending to be a ghost. And it was a man by the name of John Graham, who is this old dude who was a shoemaker. And he said that he had started by pretending to be a ghost. He would use a white sheet to frighten his apprentice. And then his apprentice went on to, blow up the story, basically. So it's not clear if him scaring his apprentice and then the apprentice telling the story to other locals and the story spreading was the case, or if this was just a coincidence to happen at the time. But John Graham did come forward, but there's no record in British law of him being punished for that. So, yeah. So do with that what you will. But yeah, that's basically the story of the Hammersmith ghost. It was just sounds like more of an urban legend than anything.
That or a Matthew McConaughey Netflix movie.
Maybe both. Here's hoping. Keeping these fingers crossed.
Yeah, somebody send that to somebody.
Like Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Send it to him. Or Netflix, or both. Send it to both of them and say, hey guys,
get on this.
Hammersmith ghost movie /series /both.
Lunchboxes, action figures.
Oh, I want the Matthew McConaughey as Hammersmith ghost action figure.
He's gonna play the creepy old shoemaker.
No, he's actually going to play Francis Smith, but the way that the movie's gonna end, well, I shouldn't say the way it's gonna end, because it's got to end with the trial, and then you've got some years later, and then that whole thing, the epilogue. But there's gonna be a scene right before he kills Thomas Millwood. He looks at the ghost, and the ghost looks back at him, but it's got his face, and that's what makes him shoot, He's like, but I'm me. You're not me. And then he shoots him. But it was really a trick. The ghost was really there, but it played an illusion so that he would shoot another man and take his life.
I'm in, dude. I want to see this now.
Yeah, me too, man. Let's get Matthew McConaughey's people on the line here and get this shit going. I'm ready. And even though it's Victorian England, he still has a southern drawl. It'll be beautiful. I love it.
All right, guys. Got ourselves a ghost here.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. And then we can have Samuel L. Jackson in there he can reprise his "Yes, they deserve to die and I hope they burn in hell" line. It'll be fantastic.
Oh, yes.
Or even better. Oh my God. All right, so we're going to reverse the roles here. Matthew McConaughey is the one on trial for murder, and he's the one that says the line, and Samuel L. Jackson is his lawyer.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, I can smell these dollars just whoosh, whoosh, whoosh.
No, we're just doing your job for you, Netflix.
I know. Somebody give me a budget, please. I need to make all of the movies for Netflix. All of them.
Well, the one I'm going to cover comes from our buddy and patron supporter, Chris.
Yeah.
He told Mike about this case in our last patron hangout.
Yeah, so he didn't give me any details on it. He had asked me if I had heard about it, and I hadn't. So I did a quick Google search while we were on the Patreon hangout, and I just saw the picture of it. And based on the picture alone, I wanted to cover it just so that you could draw it. And you did an exquisite job, might I add. And the Patreons, our patrons in the sticker club, they'll be treated to some fun stickers.
I did a couple versions, so the print club members will get.
Oh, print club members too. So, I mean, if you guys aren't on it, go check out our Patreon page and sign up for the sticker club or the print club or both. And well, I guess if you sign up for the print club, you're signed up for both anyway. But get the different versions of Mateo's take on the Ghost Clown. But anyway, long story short, in the hangout, Chris told me about this. I looked it up, and I didn't read any of the details about it. I did none of the research on it. So I'll be hearing it for the first time tonight. Mateo actually took the reins on this one and did the research. So I'm really pumped to hear about it because Chris said it was a cool story. You're telling me it's creepy. So I'm fucking ready, man.
All right, let's do it. And thank you, Chris, for sharing this with us, because this might be one of my new favorites, because this is a weird one. But this story takes place in 1973, but it was first publicized in 1978 when it made its way into issue number 5, volume 6 of the British UFO Research Association Journal, an article written by Norman Oliver. Now, it appears in this UFO journal, but the entity that we're going to talk about, Sam the Sandown Ghost Clown. And it comes from this UFO journal, and we'll talk about why it's there and what it could be later. But this story is told by two 7-year-old kids. They say one was a little bit older, a boy and a girl, who remained anonymous because of their age. But
Wait a second. This is bullshit already. Fucking kids, what do they know?
Well, see, that's the reason why we know about this story, is that their telling of the story remained so convincing and consistent that their parents were compelled to report it to investigators. Now, I got to ask you, Mike, living where you live, there had to be an almost weird tucked away place that you regularly explored or hung out at. Did you have a place like that growing up?
Oh, yeah. We had a few places like that, but one place specifically, I mentioned on the show before, it was like a local urban legend that honestly I think my friend's older cousin told us just to scare us, but we called it Witches Hollow. And the story he told us was that witches were hung up there in the 1700s. But it was basically just these trails through the woods, and there were like a bunch of hills and like ravines and stuff, and there was a little stream that flowed through it. But yeah, that's where we always hung out.
That's cool. That sounds awesome. I remember when I was a kid, we lived at this house that was, the street kind of took a corner, and our house was on the corner where, after this turn. And behind the house, they had cleared out like almost a whole city block, and were putting new development housing there. And they had dug these, what had to be 12-foot deep trenches for piping, but they were in like this huge maze configuration over the whole entire area. And they dug those and left them like that for a year. So we would go back there and run around these mazes. It's dumb and dangerous to think about now because all the dirt that they dug out of the ground was piled up on the sides of it. So we could have been buried alive at any fucking second. But
I used to do shit like that too. We had this housing development that was going in, and we used to call it the plateau, but it was really just this massive mound of dirt that they had bulldozed into a huge pile so they could build the houses in the surrounding area. And then they had all the big fucking drain pipes laying around, and we'd go hang out in the drain pipes and climb the fucking the gargantuan mound of dirt.
Right. That shit's fun, dude. But thinking back, it's incredibly dangerous. But
yeah, it was.
Well, these two little kids had a place where they explored too, and they lived right next to the Sandown Golf Course and Club, which was connected to the Sandown Airport. So it was in the 70s, in a time where parents practiced more of a birth and release method. So these kids had full freedom to explore these mostly peopleless places, and they did. And one day while playing around at the golf course, they heard a faint sound that they likened to like an ambulance siren. And this is in England, in the Isle of Wight, Sandown. That's where this is taking place. So they have a different sounding ambulance. So curious, they followed the sound to a kind of swampy area that had a small footbridge joining the golf course and the airport that was over a small creek. And once they hit a clearing right before the bridge, the sound stopped. Determined to find the source of this weird sound, they continued over the bridge until they saw something emerge from underneath the bridge, look at them, and motion for them to come closer. They slowly made their way down to the creek, and the entity that they saw, they described it as follows. They said it was 7 feet tall. It had no neck. Quote, its head was wedged straight into its shoulders. It was wearing a pointed yellow hat that was connected to a tattered green tunic with wooden antennas on them with a black knob on the top. It had wooden slats that stuck out of the sleeves of the tunic and the cuffs of his white trousers. Now for his face, and this is where it gets good. He had paper white skin, triangles for eyes, a brown square for a nose, motionless yellow lips, 3-fingered hands, and 3-toed shoeless feet.
Again with the 3 fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
As they approached this creature, he was holding a book of some sort, and while fumbling to present it to the children, he dropped it into the water. And the creature then almost comedically flopped and fumbled around in the water trying to retrieve it. And after he grabbed the book, he retreated to a small metal hut that was just beyond some shrubbery. They didn't notice it until he started making his way to it. Seeing this, the children wisely decided that it was probably the best time to go. And when they were what was estimated to be at about 150 feet away from where they last saw this thing, the creature reappeared holding what looked like a microphone attached to a small mechanical box by a cord. And as soon as he returned, so did the loud siren sound. But this time it was super loud. It was so loud that the boy fled in terror. And it's just as the young girl was turning to follow him, the sound stopped. And the creature put the microphone to his mouth and said, "Are you still here?" The thing's voice seemed so calm and gentle that they stopped, turned around, and saw the creature standing a short distance away. They were so disarmed by its voice that the children proceeded to walk towards the creature, and as the pair approached it, it opened up its book and scribbled down a quick note and held it up for the children to see. It said, "Hello, and I am all colors, Sam." They said that he stopped using the microphone, but when he talked, his lips did not move. Amazingly, and probably natural for such small kids, they began to ask Sam a bunch of questions. They asked why his clothes were so torn and dirty. He said that they were the only clothes that he had. Then the girl boldly asked flat out, "Are you a human?" Which Sam quickly replied, "No." She then asked, "Are you some type of ghost?" And Sam replied, "Well, not really, but I am, in an odd sort of way." The girl insisted on a better answer, and she asked him, "Well, what are you then?" And he said, as she described as vaguely stating, "You know." He said that he had no real name and that he was afraid of people. He was afraid that they might hurt him, and if they did, he wouldn't fight back. He also said that there were others like him on Earth. He then invited the kids into his little metal shed. They said they went inside, and it was 2 stories tall. It was metal. It had wallpaper and wooden furniture. He said he lived off the berries in the woods and off the water from the river, although he had to sanitize it before he consumed it. Then Sam produced some berries, sat down, took off his hat, and offered some berries to the kids. They then say Sam took one of the berries, put it in his ear, and shook his head until they saw the berry inside the triangles of his eyes.
What?
And he continued to shake his head until the berry went to his mouth, where it then disappeared.
What? That's so fucking weird.
Right?
So it sounds like he's got maybe a mask that he's wearing.
Maybe. They described his voice as sounding like somebody talking with their mouth stiff, but he was able to speak perfectly clear.
Yeah, that's weird.
So they sat and they chilled with Sam for the better part of a half an hour and just said their goodbyes and went on their merry way. And the kids directly ran from Sam's little shed onto the golf course and told the first person they saw that they had just talked to this ghost. And this person had such a harsh negative reaction to what they were telling them by laughing at them that the little girl waited for a few weeks to tell her parents about it. But when she did, the little boy concurred her story so much, and they were so consistent for so many weeks afterward that they reached out to somebody to report this. And that's how it's made its way into that journal. But now for me, after I read this, I love the story. It's so fucking bizarre. It's so weird. It came from a UFO journal, but there's nothing UFO about this story. The only thing that makes me think of outer space or UFOs or alien about this entity or this creature is that he mentions there's others like him on Earth, but his shed wasn't a spaceship. He didn't come from the sky. There were no bursts of light. There was no loss of memory. There was no exams or samples taken. I mean, this thing was totally chill with them and gave them information freely. So I don't see this as some type of alien or UFO encounter. And they even call it Sam the Sandown Ghost Clown.
The thing that gets me is the fact that he says, when she says, "Are you a ghost?" and he says, "Not really, but kind of," basically. It makes me, because we talked a lot how a lot of paranormal things seem to be related, and how specifically things relating to continued UFO/alien activity and poltergeist activity, how there seems to be an overlap there a lot of times. And sometimes you'll even get other cryptids involved in those type of situations. So to me, it sounds like he's trying to kind of explain what these type of entities are, because maybe they're not exactly physical beings that live in our reality, but they're able to come through. And knowing this, and knowing that a lot of ghost activity or poltergeist activity happens under similar circumstances, that's what he meant by no, but kind of, maybe. And also in the UFO vein or alien abduction vein, or however you want to look at it, a lot of extended encounters with these weird beings, whether it be aliens or what were traditionally known as fairies or elves, a lot of times they are filled with screen memories to kind of allow the human brain to make sense of it and probably to forget about some of what happened. So if you look at what's going on, they went into a metal shed, and that just happened to be in the middle of the woods, this metal shed. Could that have been a screen memory for some sort of craft, or like some sort of thing that could kind of go between dimensions where they're, not exactly in his reality, but no longer in ours. And even his appearance, like, that is so bizarre. It sounds to me like it was either something in a costume or some sort of weird screen memory that was being used to put this image in their head. And since they were together, it's a shared memory that was implanted. So they both remember this shed. And there's weird stories like that in the missing 411 stuff too, where these kids go missing and they'll find this shed with like a nice old lady in it who will give them food and keep them warm and stuff, and then they leave and find their way back home. And when they get back, they realize days have gone by. So it's similar stories are also in a lot of fairy lore as well. So it makes me think that there's something to that. There's and especially if you're going to have little kids that are just coming up with this out of nowhere, but it so closely fits with fairy lore. I don't think that's just a coincidence.
I didn't give the fairy lore stuff any consideration when I heard this. I don't know. My brain instantly went somewhere as weird as if the it entity was a real thing, this thing, but it was just completely harmless. So that's kind of threw me off. It didn't need anything from the children, didn't take anything from them, and even explained that if he ran into trouble physically, that he wasn't going to fight back, because I don't know if he talked about some type of moral standing and he didn't want to hurt anybody. Maybe he's like, I'm fucking ripped as fuck under here and I'll punch somebody's head off, so I can't do that. Or
maybe it could just be a way to keep children at ease. Like, oh, I'm so weak that if anyone were to strike me, I wouldn't even do anything. I would just let them attack me.
Yeah. I don't know, but I definitely think it's some type of creature over an alien. But the fairy stuff, yeah, maybe bleeds into that more. But when I saw the images, I just thought of Primus as Captain Shiner, or, oh no, Mr. Bill from many, many years ago.
Yeah, Mr. Bill is exactly that's exactly what I got from it. Oh no. Yeah.
When I saw the pictures, I instantly recognized it. I've seen this thing before somewhere. I had seen that thing, but I'd never heard the story behind it. Such a weird story. I love the fact that part of its uniform or whatever, its clothes and the furnishing in the shed were made of wood, which shows the low technology, that he's capable of or that he's aware of. But he knew to purify water. He had a book.
Or it was some sort of weird nature spirit.
Exactly. And the report that I read on it, I read a couple write-ups on this story. They had some type of, I don't know what you call it. It's like those round-topped, maybe like temporary airplane hangars for smaller planes, as a depiction. Yeah, as a depiction of what type, like a construction type is what they described it, like what the children said. but the picture they showed looked more like one of those small hangars. But they said it was windowless. So again, maybe they're inside of a craft. Maybe it is a screen memory. I mean, they told their dad her dad, the little girl, they call her Faye, and they say it's not her real name. But after she told her dad, he went back to the area to look to see, if there would be any indentation on the ground of a shed of that size, something that was 2 stories, and there was nothing there. And the children showed him where they were, how far they were away from it when the siren sound started, and he started beatboxing through his, little microphone there. But it's just so weird. Wooden slats hanging out of the cuffs of his pants and his sleeves. What does that mean? Maybe it's a spirit entity that's made some type of weird scarecrow of a body, and the wood holds it in place because...
Yeah, it does. And the fact that it put something through its ear and they could see it through its eye, and then it rattled around like it's hollow. It's weird, man. That's really fucking creepy.
Right. So weird. It's even like creepy is the right word for it to do that. I mean, even if it was so friendly of an entity and just literally chilled and talked with these kids, which is bizarre. I'm glad these kids were smart enough to ask questions. Like I said, they're curious little kids. So thankfully they asked questions. But for him to put a berry in his ear and shake his head and lurch forward so that it would fall down internally to his mouth didn't move when he ate it either. What on earth could that be? What is that thing?
Yeah, so weird. Maybe it's a robot, and they just put it in some shitty scarecrow costume.
Well, in the article I read about it, they mentioned that in that dude's article, Mr. Oliver's article, that maybe that was some type of robotic entity testing the toxicity levels of those berries before he consumed them.
Yeah, could be.
The robot idea is thrown around when it comes to old no-name Sam there. But yeah, that is some creepy shit.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
It's like a Ninja Turtle like friend.
No, I could see it being like because you know how there were some Ninja Turtle episodes where like the bad guy wasn't a bad guy to start, and then something happens that turns him into a bad guy.
Yeah.
I could see that being the case here. Like it's this misunderstood giant of a weird automaton thing. And it just wants to make friends, but people keep shunning it and running away because he's this 7-foot tall creepy clown thing. And finally someone lashes out and like throws a bottle at him or something, and it sends him into a rage, and he fucking goes through Central Park just fucking everything up. And then the Ninja Turtles have to swing into action, and they fight him, and then he's like, even you fight me and you're monsters too. And they have like this whole philosophical conversation, and then it ends with them being like, you know what, maybe we're not enemies. And then he just walks off all sad, and then they go back to the sewers and eat pizza. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Oh man, God, Ninja Turtle villain.
Yeah. So if anybody needs someone to write a Ninja Turtle episode as well, you can also hire me for that. So Nickelodeon, if you're listening, I am ready to be hired, please.
Yeah, I definitely think Sam, the Sandown Ghost Clown, needs a cheesy metal song.
You think so? All right, let's give Sam a metal song.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.